Okay. It is my job to tell you all it is now 1923. So you have to go back 100 years, and the speakers that we have are not current speakers. They're from 1923, starting with my dear friend, the mayor. Mayor writes, I have to put this on there. Now it's 1923 officially. Mayor, I'm waiting for you.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Mayor.
So good to see you. We do have a decent crowd. I'd like to start off, just talk a little bit about 1923. This past year has been an incredible year. I made a few notes here. If you don't believe me, just a couple years ago, only 1% of homes had electricity and plumbing. In 1920, only 1% of the homes. Here in West Park, we're doing much better. In the late 1800s, we were able to add clean running water. Can you imagine what it was like not having running water in your house? Not having indoor plumbing for toilets? And then, just a couple years ago, I'll tell you, isn't gas heat wonderful? No more getting coal and shoveling it into the furnace early in the morning. Our parents did that. Some of you, when you were younger, probably did it. But here we are in 1923, we got gas heat. And most recently, they added electricity. What's electricity? Well, you know it's pretty cool because you don't have to crank up the Victrola anymore. You can just turn on the radio. Is that unbelievable? You walk into a room and you want some lights, you throw a switch. You don't have to light a gas lamp. It's just incredible. And perhaps this is one of my favorites. If you want hot water, you go to this little handle and you turn it and you get hot water. Can you imagine what a difference that made in our society? I mean, just 20 or 30 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that because you all would have stunk something awful. Here in 1923, we got indoor plumbing, we got hot water, we can bathe. It's just an incredible world. And then on top of that, we just finished the war to end all wars. The war to end all wars, and we created the League of Nations. So with those two things happening, hopefully never again in our lifetime or our children's lifetime will they have to experience what we just went through from 1917 to 1920. So that's 1923, and I just can't imagine anything ever happening to make our world better than it is in 1923. But we've got to talk about some other things here. And the first one I'm going to talk about is a good friend of mine, excuse me a minute, and his name was Oswald Camp. Many of you heard that name, maybe you've seen Oswald around. You know he runs the general store and post office right a couple doors down here. Let me talk a little bit about Oswald. Now, I'd like to start, some of you might still be unaware that Oswald passed away just a few months ago at age 77. He was a wonderful contribution to this community. He made wonderful contributions. His wife Lena died 6 years before in 1917. And as everyone in this room will remember, his son Jacob was murdered right over here on Rocky River Drive by his uncle of all people. Right on Riverside Drive, and his child was with him when that happened. What a horrible thing to happen to Jacob Camp. He was just 46 years old. Gary, where's Gary? Oh, Gary, you were the last one to visit with Mr. Oswald. Can you tell us what you learned?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Being he's passed, it's a horrible thing, but I did spend an afternoon with him, and we spoke about all the things happening in West Park, and then obviously the annexation. But he was really excited about moving his house right behind Current Street, and they're in the middle of it now, April.
Was he planning to move to Fernwood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so that's all being undertaking as we speak. But yeah, it's a sad thing that he didn't live to see what was happening with all the accomplishments by his family.
Thank you, Gary.
One more thing,
Go ahead.
Mayor. When you see Fred Input, let him know to be nice to the Marquardt kids. I know they can be rambunctious with the big playground in the back of the house.
He's going to be here in a few minutes, so you might be able to tell him yourself, Mr. Marquardt.
Right, thank you for your time.
Mr. Marquardt and Mr. Emmett had properties, Emmett, that adjoined each other. But talking a little bit more about Mr. Oswald, who we all knew and loved. He was born in Switzerland in 1845. Once in America, he opened a store at West 49th and Lorraine. In 1875, he purchased the 4 acres right on the corner. We're on those 4 acres at the southwest corner, and he opened a general store and post office. A small building, it looked like an old farmhouse. We have pictures of it somewhere, and it faced Rocky River Drive. In 1900, he built that wonderful general store and post office that we've been looking at every day of our lives. I'm sure you all go in there to mail your letters and get your goods. He has a pretty good thriving business there. In 1909, not much later, he built that large apartment building that has all those apartments in it, just a couple doors behind the Cam's general store on Rocky River Drive. I think it'll be here for years to come, and I'm sure most of you know about it. He was a great man. It would not surprise me if 100 years ago people were still talking about him, because that's the kind of guy he was. And I've heard people recently refer to this intersection as Cam's Corners. Don't know if any of you have heard that, but maybe someday it will catch on and it'll be Cam's Corners. Now I want to talk a little bit about me, one of my favorite subjects. First I'll say, how about those Indians? They were world champions this year, and they finished in 4th place the following year, 15 games behind the Yankees, and they're paying Tris Speaker $30,000. Who in the world can afford to pay a baseball player $30,000? I don't know, that's just crazy to me. Before I talk about the annexation, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. And my wife is in the audience, and I'm glad she could make it tonight. And she said everyone will notice me because she has one of those new contraptions on. I think it's called a brazier or something, brazier, or is that it, brazier? Yeah. So, I wasn't supposed to mention that? Oh, never mind what you just heard. So I was born right here in Wakes Park in 1883, so I am 39 years old. I may look older, but being married is a tough job. Our family farm was very near West 147th and Paradis. When West Park High School opened back in 1899, I was one of the very first students there. I went on to become the first graduate of the school and the only graduate of the 1901 class. Just 2 years ago, I ran for mayor of West Park and I won. Thank you everybody that voted for me. The ones that didn't vote for me, well, you're welcome here, I guess. Early this year, I banned all gambling at the Rockport racetrack. You've all been to the racetrack. Yeah, I'm the guy that banned all gambling. So what that had Mr. Colburn did, he closed the racetrack, and it would have closed anyhow, because with this merger to Cleveland, Cleveland doesn't allow gambling, so I wasn't all that bad. I was just a little bit early. My career as West Park mayor came to an end on December 31st last year, and that's when West Park merged, thanks to all you people. I'm going to talk a little bit about that merger. That's why you're here today. My future plans, because I know you're dying to know what am I going to do in the future. Well, I plan to stay with Wrights Engineering. It's a fine firm, and 100 years from now, I bet you it'll still be around. Right down here on Rocky River Drive is just a guess. Enough about me. I'd like to talk a little bit about the annexation. What a wonderful thing happened to the future of West Park in the election last November. The good people of West Park voted almost 2-1 to become the new Ward 33 of Cleveland. As most of you know, our little town just does not have the needed funds to do all the things we need to do. First, the bad news. All of you are well aware that our roads are just terrible. In the winter, only Lorraine and South Riverside are passable, and that's only due to the interurban that runs down that way to Berea. You guys all know that. We really need trolley car service. Yes, we do have interurbans, but they make few stops and run infrequently and are expensive. Lakewood, we know, they rejected the annexation, but they already had trolley car service, so it wasn't a big thing for them. It is for us. We want that. Our infrastructure is poor, and our taxes are some of the highest in the entire county. So it makes perfect sense. I encouraged all of you to vote for that levy, and you did. Now the good news. Take a walk down Lorraine Avenue, and this suburb is just bustling with building activity. For so many years, there was almost nothing on Lorraine between Settlement Road, which we just named West 130th, and Cams. There was nothing there. That section now has a new Big Bang building right here on the corner, northeast corner, along with a movie house. I'm looking forward to that movie house. The West Park Theater is right across the street, and so many other stores, recent, added, and many more are coming. We are going through right now the biggest boom that this area has ever seen. If you date any of these buildings, you'll find out that they all were built in the early 1920s. Our second firehouse, number 2, also just opened at 129th and Lorraine. We have a new pumper. That cost a lot of money for the firehouse on order, and it should be arriving any day now. Jefferson Park. It is our beautiful park. It is a jewel of our community. It's down at Lorraine on 133rd. It's our oldest park. Every year our fire department floods a large portion of it so all the kids can skate there, ice skate there. It's just a wonderful place in our community to go. Someday we'll have many more parks, but as of today, Jefferson Park is it. And the potential for a new park being created down in the valley has just huge potential for our citizens. Lastly, by joining Cleveland, most of our road problems should be taken care of. Maybe we can even get the long-needed underpass at 143rd and Lorraine. Our taxes will be much lower, and Cleveland has promised to consider trolley car service for West Park at a fare of only a nickel. If that comes true, think of the 2 cents you'll save every single day. If you go both ways, you'll save 4 cents every day. That is a lot of money, 4 cents. This concludes my portion of the program, and I'd like to introduce our next guest. Let me see who it is. I got all these cheat sheets here. And our next guest is Bill Stinchcomb. William Stinchcomb, as you know him, or some of you might not even know him. Bill! Give me a minute. Bill, we're ready for you. What are you doing, smoking one? All right, I'm coming. I don't even know why I'm here, but I'm here. Most of you maybe have never heard of me, but my name is William Stinchcomb. I've been told that I resemble the mayor a little bit. I don't see it. I really don't see it. I was born in 1878 on a farmhouse down on Denison in Lorraine. In 1895, I was hired by Cleveland Engineering Department as a surveyor. In 1902, Mayor Tom L. Johnson appointed me to the city parks engineer. Around 1905, I became aware of what a valuable asset the parks surrounding the Cleveland area could be. Just a couple of years ago, in 1917, I was successful in having the state legislature pass a bill that permitted local cities to band together and create a local park district. Won't that be wonderful? A park board was created, and then immediately they started to acquire land. Right here in West Park, the Tyler family, they donated their land down in the valley there for part of this new park. Then last year, I was appointed the new park director for the whole entire area. This is a big deal, and I'm proud of it. And I'm going to make those parks into something that you're all going to love. Perhaps my first big job will be to build roads so that people can reach the secluded area. There's no roads down there. There's just one road that goes through the park, that goes from Lorraine down to Mastic. That's the only road through the park. All the other roads don't exist yet. So a lot of that has to be worked on. We're just starting out, but have many great ideas, just as the park system should turn out, just how it should turn out. These are a few ideas. Buy enough land along the rivers and valleys in order to make a complete circle of greater Cleveland. An emerald necklace, if you will. Good idea, huh? Here in West Park, once the roads are built, we envision a large, wonderful park at the foot of Hogsback Hill. They could play baseball there and all kinds of things. Golf is really catching on in America, and building a golf course on the old white 2-minute farm property at the foot of Wooster Hill would be an ideal location for golf. Horseback riding is such a popular thing to do nowadays. We think we may be able to enhance that experience by building several trails across the valley. These are just a few ideas, with many more to come. I want to assure all of you that until the day I retire, I will make this park system one of the best in the nation. Hey, maybe someday if I'm successful, they will build a monument to me someday. It could happen, you never know. So let's see, who's up next? Oh, we do have Mr. Marquardt coming. Let me go get him. Phil! Phil, what are you doing? You napping again? Son of a... Oh, hello everybody. I don't know what I'm doing here, but they asked me to speak, so I'll say a few things. Most of you have heard of the Philip or the Marquardt name. Well, I'm Philip Marquardt, one of the many Marquardts. Here Marquardt, there Marquardt, everywhere Marquardt. I'm glad to be here today. In 1912, I built that large 52-room mansion on the curve of Warren Road. You've all seen it, a magnificent building. It'll be there for many years to come. Have you heard of the Marquardt Builders? That would be us. We own a business located just east of Harrington Road, which is 150th now. We are one of the biggest home builders in all of Cuyahoga County. Today, there's hardly a street in West Park where we have not built someone a wonderful new home. Here at Marquardt, we are very proud of our accomplishments. That's all I have to say. Who's next? Fred! 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 Yeah, I'm here. Why I'm here, I just don't know, but I'm here. I mean, I'm not somebody important like all these other people, but I did write a few words that I would say. For those of you who have never met Fred Empett, I'm Fred Empett. I've been told I'm cantankerous and kind of tough to deal with. And was that you that made a comment about me the other? What did you say?
Respect for the name, but yeah, I understand the Marquardt kids can be rambunctious, but you don't have to yell at them every time.
You keep those dang kids off my property, and we won't have a problem. All right. So again, I'm Fred Empett, and as many of you may know, I have a sister Bessie, and she's tougher than I am. And I have owned a large 32-acre farm on Rose Lane, which is the road that someday won't exist anymore, but it's down on Warren Road, not far from Warren Road. We have lived there all our lives, and our father owned it before we did. We have now been there for over 50 years. Maybe you can hear my dog barking or our 6 cats from time to time. We also have a horse and 2 cows. We still have no electricity. 1923, we don't need that electricity. We don't need plumbing. We don't need running water. But be careful where you step when you're around our house. Now that we have merged with Cleveland, Bessie and I are both scared to death that the city of Cleveland might try to take our farm someday to use as a future city park. I really hope that never happens. But you never know. The power of City Hall is powerful. So that's all I have to say. I got a guy named Fred Colburn, who I'm going to see if I can find him. He's in the basement, I think. Hey, Fred! Yeah, is it my turn already? All right. What did the guy print for me to say? Oh, my name is Fred Colburn. Well, that makes sense. My father, who was also Fred, was one of the first settlers of West Park. He arrived in 1830 from Germany. He was in a very short time he owned land on all 4 corners of what we now call Cam's Corners. Some of you may remember or have heard that in 1906 my son Wilbur was killed when he was in a tractor, actually a bench, a trailer, and it got hit by a streetcar and he was killed. That was a very sad day. In 1890, my dad and I built that half-mile racetrack you see right on the corner here. Right on the northeast corner. We had a half-mile racetrack. You guys have seen the grandstand. It featured harness racing until the mayor shut us down, along with gambling. And gambling was very lucrative. But without gambling, horse tracks don't do very well. Horses from all over the state would race, and fans would come on urbans to watch the gamblers. Or well, not watch the gamblers, to gamble. Who wrote this? Earlier this year, my good friend and mayor made that decision, no more gambling, so that's the end of the racetrack. Like I said, it would have ended anyhow because Cleveland doesn't allow for gambling. Moving forward, we do plan to sell all of our land for future development. We envision along Lorraine Road that there'll be a lot of, you already got the bank building there, but we're gonna see a lot more development along that property. And then on to the south of that, we can envision streets with houses being put in. That's all I have today, so thanks for allowing me to speak. And I think my last guest is coming up in a minute, and that would be Mr. Herman Six. And Herman! They're never ready when you call them. Herman! Yeah, I'm here, okay. So, you want to hear about Herman Six, do you? Well, I saved him for last because he's one of the more interesting characters. And William Six is my father, and he really got everything started. He was born in Berlin, Germany in 1823. In 1847, at the age of 24, he arrived in the USA. In 1860, he was a butcher, a farmer, and the owner of the very well-known Sixth Tavern, which at that time was on the south side of Lorraine, right across from where the Triscuit-Lorraine Road intersection is. So that was his saloon right there. Just a few years later, in 1867, he built the Sherman House on the north side of Lorraine. Somebody, you already heard Jim talking about it a little bit. He named it after William Tecumseh Sherman, who was a famous Civil War general. At that time, he moved his Sixth Tavern into that hotel, which will be here many years to come. And the tavern, saloon if you call it, was on the left side of the main floor, and my family lived on the right side of the main floor. And then upstairs, we had a second floor ballroom along with guest rooms. In 1887, a grand New Year's Day ball was held there for all the citizens of West Park. Everybody that was anybody went to this ball at the top of that ballroom back in 1887.
I remember it.
So yeah, 30 years ago, were you there? Good. Right around 1912, we thought we got to improve access to the second floor because our guests are coming home at all times of the night. So we added a front porch gazebo to it, and Jim, or Gary, you don't know where those pictures are, do you?
Yeah, they're in the office, so.
Go get them, if you don't mind. So we added a second porch to that so guests could enter from the outside. My dad died in 1908 and at the age of 85, and ended days of the West Park's most famous roadhouse were over. Just a couple of years ago in the late 1920s, the Masonic Order took over. And Gary's going to get those pictures, which I want to show you. And before he's getting them now, my portion is just about complete, and then we're in just a few minutes here, we're going to have two featured guest speakers. But let me show you these pictures first. Thank you so much, Gary. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I parked it. I'm not mayor anymore, so I don't need your vote. I don't have to be nice to anybody anymore.
Oh my goodness.
So that's a wonderful picture of that house just about 10 years ago, before they added the front porch in 1910-11. And that was how the building looked back then. And then we have additional pictures which are a little smaller, and you can look at them later, but this is the man that originally owned the property. That's the building with the porch. But I'll just leave this here, and you can walk up here later and take a look at it. But now, I've been on here enough, and we're going to throw it back to the mayor. Oh, here I am. And before we move on to question and answer, we do now have two additional speakers. One is going to be Lucille France, who is a current senior at West Park High School. But first, we're lucky enough to have the well-known chef, Mama Sapone with us. Mama Sabone? Sabone? Saboni? Get out of the, oh, there she is. You snuck up on me. Mama Sabone. Kapish. Talk to the people.
I don't know why I'm here. I'm cooking. They say I should. You want to know about me?
Yeah.
Buongiorno. I'm Giuseppina Faranacci. I come from Naples. My husband is Michele, or you say in English, Michael. Michael and I, we come from Italy. We get married. We have a big family. Our first boy, Antonio, Tony. Our second boy, Luigi. And we have 8 more children. I don't know how I have the time. I'm so busy. I cook, I make the wine, I make the bread. But everybody loves Mama Zappone's sauce. Everybody come over, Sunday dinner. Today, I start out, I come from church, come home and I bake. I have the sugo cooking. I'm going to have some family over. So all my friends, they tell me, oh, Josephine, your sauce, it's so delicious. You open a restaurant, no? I'm too busy. How am I going to open a restaurant? So for the time being, you come to Mama Zappone's. I live on 130th. So my door is always open to all of you. Ciao. Ciao.
Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, but not least, we have a student from West Park High School. There's this is Lucille Ferentz, and she didn't make the basketball team.
I did. What are you talking about? He's a cat's meow. Let's give him a hand. We're in those glad rags. Look at him. And Mama Zappone, such a doll, isn't she? Hi, folks. I know it's been a few years since you've been in high school, so I'm here to tell you about West Park High School. I am a graduating senior. Finally made it to senior year. But it's been a lot of changes at West Park High School. Well, first of all, as you know, on December 31st at noon, 1922, we were no longer West Park. And so our West Park High School, as we know it, will probably not be West Park High School once a new school year starts. They're looking for a new name for our school. So we're one of the last classes from West Park High School. And here is our annual, our first yearbook, and actually it'll be our last yearbook for West Park High School. We got the idea from our new principal, Mr. Dustin. He is really the cat's meow, as they say, too. We just love him. And he came up with the idea to have a yearbook, to have all our memories put down and talk about our seniors. And we have in our class, which is one of our biggest graduating classes, we have 32 students, and which is a lot for 1923. But when you look at the classes that are coming up, the juniors have twice as many as we do, so they have about 64. The sophomores have like 120, and the freshmen, I can't even count. I just know that there's so many freshmen around, and we just love to play with the freshmen. I remember the first couple days of school, they'd ask, where's the cafeteria? And they're all crazy trying to look for their classes, and of course we'd send them in the wrong direction. You know, that's what seniors do. And we always joke them too. We always tell them jokes, and we say, hey, do you know what you call a freshman in winter? And they go, no. We say wintergreen. Anyway, they laugh, you know, they don't understand. But anyway, so I wanted to tell you more about our programs. If you have any kids that are looking to go to school there, we have a whole building over by 150th and Lorraine. And at first, when we first started there, I started there 4 years ago, we only had the top floor. And now we had the lower grades on the lower floors. But now we have those buildings built so that we have the whole high school now, because we have so many kids. Just playing basketball. So, so I want to tell you a little bit about the high school. We have 3 teams of sports. One is the boys football team. They didn't do too good this year. They were 1-2, lost 2, and tied 4. And the most important game of the whole year, our rival, Berea High School. And that was such a good game. It was 0-0. I know you think, oh, what kind of a game is this? But it was 0-0. We were in the 4th quarter. It was the last couple minutes, and sure enough, the running back went all the way for a foot touchdown. The score became 7-0, Berea. Oh, yeah, shucks. Well, next year we'll get them. And then we have the boys basketball team. They didn't fare very well either. They won 8 games. They lost 15. And they play around the city to different high schools, and Berea too. But the best team, we had one team that went undefeated. And you're looking at one of the players. The girls basketball team was undefeated. And we actually got a silver loving cup from the city of Cleveland that we display in the hallway by the front office. So we went undefeated. I was a guard. I just love playing basketball. As you see, I just came from practice. It's a fun high school. A lot of fun, and we have a lot of clubs. We have a friendship club. We have a high Y club. We have another one, a literary club, drama club. We have clubs for anything you can think of that you want to do extracurricular activities. We also have parties. You know, in high school, you love to party, have fun with your friends. We had this one party that was sponsored by the High Y Club, and it was called an automobile party. And all the people that came, we had to get in groups because we were going to compete against each other. And each group had to be called a different car name. So if you're Fords or the Chevys or whatever. And we would compete with different activities. And whoever win at the end of the night would get prizes. So we did silly things. Like, for example, we had one person from each team compete. One of the things we had to do, we had to blow flour from a cup. And whoever could blow the most flour from the cup would win that competition. The one that I loved the best was that we had to have the boys change a flat tire on a car. But they had to do it in girls' clothing. So they had the girls' clothing here, and they had their clothes on. They had to quick get dressed in a dress and stockings and all this. And then they had to change the tire, then take their clothes off. It was a hoot. It really was a hoot. We had so much fun. So we had a lot of fun with our parties. Also, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our yearbook here. I was on the staff for the yearbook. And a lot of it is not only pictures of us and from the time period, but we have a lot of poems in here. And this was always my favorite, just a short little limerick. But it's something that I think all of us have heard of or have been to when we were in high school. It says, "Souls of students old and worn, what dread terrors have you known? Latin quiz or history gloom? No, more feared than anything, the detention room." So we had them back then too, folks, yes. And also I wanted to talk a little bit about graduation. It's really going to be sad for us to leave our alma mater. We had so much fun at school. We loved it there. We learned a lot. We had classes, we had English, history. The girls all took domestic science. I took sewing and a cooking class. We also had to take a literary class and and secretary skills class. And the boys took woodworking. So we were prepared for our future. The way I got to school is because I live over on Riverside Drive, which is way out more by the valley back there, way south of town. So I had to walk to Rocky River Drive in Purtis and take the 22 trolley that came down Rocky River Drive, change here at Cam's, and then take the 22 that went all the way out to 140th, where they have their roundhouse there. So that's the way I went. And then that's the reason, too, I can't stay long. I have to get over to the stores. My mom sends me every day from school. I go to the store and get some items for her. Because we live so far out, it's hard for us to get the conveniences. So here's my little list, just to give you an idea. I have to go to the pharmacy and get some paregoric, West Park Pharmacy right over here. I have to also go to Mr. Cam's shoe repair. My dad's pair of shoes had a hole in them. I'm also gonna go to Land Fair, which is here at Camps, and buy some thread for my mom. And Fred Albert's grocery store, I'm gonna buy some bread, all for a total cost of about $1. Oh, and there's gonna be a few pennies left for me to get some penny candies for myself and my 2 brothers and sister. So it works out real well. So you know how it is, you send your kids to the store, make sure they get a little candy for themselves. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. So let me give you a little overview here of what we wrote in our yearbook. This is from all our seniors about leaving our alma mater. We have only a few more weeks of school. Some are glad, some are sad, and some were good and some were bad. Very few, however, of our class were so unfortunate that they could not complete the course. Those of us who are going out into the world now express the deepest regrets because this dear old alma mater has meant much more to us in the last 4 years. Our secrets have been confided in her, and we have found her a good sympathizer. We have made friends here, some we may never see again. Do you blame us for not wanting to leave our old haunting grounds? Yeah, we're going to miss her so much. We're going to miss with our graduation. But we have bright futures on the horizon. All of us have plans. Like I plan to be on Broadway. Yes, you'll see me there next. I'm in the drama club and I play in a lot of plays. I know I'm going to hit it on Broadway. And I have friends who want to serve overseas. And I have friends who want to become a doctor. And so we're just, what awaits us when we graduate. So I have to go. My mom's expecting me home for dinner, but it was great talking to you folks, and I hope you can stop by and come by the high school and see what you think of it before it changes its name to something else. I think it's going to be called. So, great seeing you.
Thank you, Lucille. It's not often we have students attend this, and I'm glad you could come by. And I know for a fact that Lucille France, when she talked about everything she told you, she was absolutely accurate at that time. She did live out on, the research was done. And I'm gonna do a little trick here. I'm going to make it 2023 again. Because the whole time we were in character and we didn't want to break character, but now that we have broken character, we can take questions and answers. I think Mama Sapone, do you have anything more that you want to tell what happened after 1923 a little bit, right? Why don't you start? Oh, 2023, you want to have that.
You're a busy lady.
The Mama Sapone that you met just before was 40 years old at the time, still married. The family started out, she and her husband Michael emigrated to the Cleveland area, lived in Little Italy. They had ambitions of moving to California someday, but they only made it as far west as West 130th, which was, I think, called Settlement Street at the time. They went on, they had a total of 10 kids. Well, in 1928, Michael Sapone died, leaving Josephine a widow with 7 kids left at home and $17,000 in debt. So she was really well known for, you know, her ability to cook and always having people over. So her oldest child, Tony, said, "Mama, let's start a restaurant." So they did, and all the facts are in this West Park publication. Mama Sapone and the Spaghetti Empire has all the details, but they did start their first restaurant on 130th, which was actually the home that they lived in. It became a restaurant, Tony's. And then, I'm not too sure of the history, I'm sorry, I didn't study.
No, you did good. We wanted to do early years and you got it.
Eventually, they opened 2 more restaurants. The well-known Tony's Diner, made well-known by Dennis Kucinich, if anybody remembers him. Used to have his meetings at Tony's Diner. And then, not too far from here, maybe a stone's throw, Camp's Corners was Tony's restaurant. And I actually was there. I'm sure some of you have been there. I'm not sure when it closed. There was a fire?
Oh, it was 20 years ago, I bet.
Yeah.
Now it's been other businesses since then.
Yeah, so, so the Zapones are deeply rooted in West Park and in Camp's Corners. So,
Thank,
don't forget to.
it's all in there. Thank you, Julie.
Welcome.
Julianne, can you tell us what happened to,
Yeah, Lucille and her aspirations. Yeah, Lucille, what I did is I studied every student in the graduating class. There was 32 of them, boys and girls. And I even studied the principal and looking up city directory, census tracts, trying to find them, where they went, and ended up, and also death records, and also military records. So what I found out from all of these is that it was typical for the time period. The girls went to high school, but most of them became housewives. And when they left high school and got married, married women didn't work. As for example, at their high school, there was, I think, 4 male teachers and maybe 13 female teachers, and all those female teachers were miss. None of them were married. So all these girls who then graduated, who had these aspirations for so much more, for example, Lucille, by the way, her friends called her Toots. So Toots, and another thing, when she was a senior at high school, she was 16. She would have been 17 that September. So in 4 years, she was married. She had 2 children. She stayed at home. And then her husband was pretty prosperous, I could tell by where they lived and the addresses, but in the 30s, I saw in the 30 census, he lost his job. They were living with relatives and she was working as a bookkeeper. And then by the 40s, they had bought a house on West Park Avenue. So he must have got a job then, by the wartime 40s, when things were turning around after the Great Depression. And she lived in her house till she died in 1989, and then her son lived in that house. Since then. Then I even tracked down her son, who lives in Rocky River, and I sent him a correspondence that I was doing his mother, and I haven't heard back from him yet. So anyways, so all these women, the only women that I saw that worked after high school were ones that never married, and they had jobs all their life, all through the census. But it was, what you're in high school, you don't know where your life is going to take you. You have all these dreams and goals that you want to do, and just life and culture at the time might change those ideas. And another thing I will say, one last thing known about her is her father, his name was Louis Franz. He was nationally known as one of the best bowlers in the United States. And he was actually a bowling manager for one of the bowling alleys. I haven't found out which one yet. He was a bowling manager. And then I saw, I don't know if you remember years ago, I remember my parents used to do it at the Cleveland Press. They used to announce the different bowling leagues and the bowling scores and who was, bowling and what leagues and all. They had that all on the sports page. So I could follow Lucille. She was a premier women's bowler. And that's where she spent her time, bowling. Later, for many years, like 30 years or so, she was a bowler too, in the women's, and always top scorer. So interesting local. So yeah, that's about follows her up. Oh, and books for sale.
Julianne Phillips Appleson, or Julianne Appleson Phillips, right? That's her husband, he'll punch me. But we go all the way back to grade school, and she is a huge what's the word? Asset. Thank you. Sometimes it doesn't flow. And you can just see how many people would go through that much research. And she started with a picture in a yearbook. And she went to several of those pictures. And she found one that was very interesting. And then all the follow-up on what happened with the rest of Toots' life is pretty impressive. And wherever Toots is today, I'm sure she's smiling down on us that she was the subject of a conversation at this event we're having. So having said all of that, we're back in 2023. My wife looks like she's ready to go. No, but I'll entertain any of your questions. And you might just, anything you want. Gary, come up with something.
At Albert Cemetery, there's a bunch of Sikhs buried there. Are they the ones that?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes, they are. Anyone else?
West Park High School, what?
West Park High School, I'll tell you a little bit about it. It still exists today, that building, built in 1898, opened in 1899. It's at 152nd and Lorraine. It is the laundromat in front of it. We had an open house. We had an open house there about 20 years ago with the Marshall Alumni Association, we took out the ceiling tiles and the stairway going up into the building, and there was big John Marshall across there, which we thought was pretty cool. But that building dates back to 1898, and we have write-ups about the building. The original building had 4 rooms on the first floor, 4 rooms on the second floor, but then they built an entire huge addition on the front. Because we're looking at these pictures from 1899 and they got arched windows. Then we're looking at the pictures after 1923 and they have new windows. It was a different building. But they named it John Marshall in September of 1923. Around 1934, they had about 1,200 students in that little building. They had outbuildings, but we've seen pictures of the kids just clogging the stairways. And they would play their football games behind what was George Washington School in that large field area there before they built Newton D. Baker. That's where the football games were held. And I believe it was 1928 when John Marshall Lawyers won their first city championship on that field. And they had a grandstand there and it was pretty prominent. So what else you want to know about West Park?
So then they moved to where John Marshall is now.
Then they moved to over on 140th in 1934, February, I believe. Could have been 33. The brain's starting to go. But, and then that was recently torn down and replaced with a newer building, which was a shame, but that's what happened. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Was West Park the last annexation by the city?
It was the last big one. I think they might have done a couple, they never, to the best of my knowledge, they never annexed another entire city. They took little pieces here and there. Just a few years ago, the airport and the IX Center is part of West Park now. But it wasn't part of West Park prior to just a few years ago, but it is part of our property now.
I live in what's called, well, our area is called West Town, but I am still trying to figure out if we're West Park, like where does West Park go to?
That's the #1 question
Right?
we always
I know,
get.
it's like we would really love to know.
And I don't do a lot on Facebook. I leave that to my peer Gary Swillick to update people. But I always see on Facebook, people that say that West Park doesn't go down to 107, goes down all the way down to 117th Street, don't know what they're talking about. West Park ends at the railroad tracks. And I just want to scream and strangle somebody
Yeah.
because we have maps of West Park. I don't have one right in front of me. But the definitive answer to that, and it will never ever change. It can be changed all around, but we know what West Park was. It started at West 117th Street. It went all the way to the river. So when you talk about the river down in the valley, when you go to Little Met, Little Met is in West Park. Big Met is across the river, it's in Fairview. And Mastic Woods is in West Park. So here we are in West Park. How many communities in Cleveland have 2 golf courses? But continuing on, so now you know West Park left to right, north to south. Lakewood City line is the border on the north, and on the south it's Brook Park. With one exception, a little bit of River Edge Township takes a little bit of a corner where those existing buildings are and nowhere else. The aviation place where you can go to a restaurant, that's in West Park.
For heaven's sake.
So see what you're gonna, that alone made it worth the visit.
That we're not called West Park, West Town, West Park something, because it, you know, it would elevate the status a little, may I just say?
And West Park was named after John West's farm, where
Yeah.
he had a big pond and a park in front of it. And if you wanted to go anywhere out in the country, you went to John West and you went to his park. And it became West Park, and that's why we are West Park. Different communities got different names for different reasons, but people that say West Park is just this side of the tracks, that's Ward 17, but that's not West Park. Young man.
Yeah, how long was it independent city for then?
It was an independent city, not for very long. It was Alger Settlement, it was West Park Village, and then in 1900 it became the city of West Park till 1923. So, but originally we were Rockport. And I don't want to bore you, but originally we were Rockport. Well, what's Rockport? Rockport Township. What's Rockport Township? Lakewood, West Park, Rocky River, Fairview. That's Rockport Township. 5 miles square. And, but that was us originally. And then the groups kind of broke out. We're one of the few townships, we got 4 historical societies. Most of them have 1, but we got 4. Lakewood has theirs, it's one of the best in the city. River and Fairview have theirs. But West Park kind of stands alone and it's kind of cool. The river cut us in half, which had a whole lot to do with that. But it was only for about 23 years that we had a mayor and a fire department and a police department and all of that. But here we are 100 years later, and we're still calling it West Park, and I'll call it West Park until the day I die. Next question. Yes?
The racetrack then was behind the bank?
There are people that will tell you erroneously that the racetrack was behind George Washington School because that's where the West Park, the school board had a stadium, had a grandstand there, but it was for athletics. And that grandstand is not the same that the racetrack had. And there are pictures of it back on the maps there.
Ross, right there.
Where you,
I got a picture there, isn't that the grandstand?
this is the grandstand, and if you come up here and look, and I ask you how many females are in that picture, you will find 1. No one's found more than 1 yet, and it's a little girl sitting right in the front. It's a wonderful old picture of the racetrack that's set. It went from Cam's Corners, it went west or east till about 168th, and it went north all the way to Dartmouth. So it was a large area that this track was on, and it was quite famous for the races. They even had some car racing there. Next question. I stump you? What the hell you want?
The property line that was in question, Lindale. Okay, you have 117th turns into Memphis, and then you have Bel Air.
It curves around a little bit to avoid Lindale. Lindale was a city of its own. It was not part of West Park. Thank you for bringing that to my attention and failing to stump me. I know what you're trying to do.
The road that goes to Brook Park, is it?
Well, there is no road.
West 130th?
You go, any of the streets on 130th, they all dead end going
Yeah, okay.
west, and that's the boundary line.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get you. Julianne.
I have a stumper.
Oh, damn it.
No, maybe, and I like to ask people because maybe somebody might know. Jefferson Park. We can't find any records of who Jefferson Park was named after. And
There is a record.
Well, I checked with Gary, and he said that he showed me this article
Yep.
that said that, Jefferson Park will, this park, but no one has said, how did it get its name? And he thought maybe he'd have to go back to this, the city council records or something. Does anybody know how it got its name?
I know it was, I've seen it in writing,
Okay,
that the city of Cleveland, and that is a city of Cleveland park even prior to 1923, which most people would find highly unusual. Why does the city of Cleveland, in the 1915, why does the city of Cleveland have a big park in the city of West Park? Big cities did that back then. But the city of Cleveland made the decision, their council, that all of their parks would be named after a president.
Oh.
See?
good. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there a particular ethnic group or area of Europe that the people came?
West Park was settled by Germans and Irish people.
Germans and Irish, okay.
Now we're changing, we got a little bit of everything, but Germans and Irish were the main settlers. Oswald Cam was, yeah, we had a few, but Oswald Cam was from Switzerland, so there's an exception, but most of those names, when you trace them back, John West came over from Leitrim, Ireland, so that's to answer
Did
your
they
question.
establish immediately from Europe to this area, or probably from someplace else and then moved west?
She is gonna stump.
I mean, I just-
Yeah, I don't know the actual, I don't know that all of them followed a certain route. I know my mom is a Clegg. You've heard of Clegg Park, Clegg Road?
Yeah.
There are 7 Clegg families in Cleveland. See, 7, I went to Marshall. And they all came from the Isle of Man. But we can't, we have trouble, because it goes way back to the 1700s, we have trouble relating them together. But when the first Clegg settled in Lake County in 1756, I think, that was my family. And then they had to tell somebody back in the Isle of Man, hey, come to northern Ohio, that's the place to stay, and they all did. So I imagine similar things happened with Irish and the Germans.
No. Wow.
Anything else?
I have one more question. So the interurbans that you're talking about, was that related to the RTA now, or is that something completely different?
You know, and dear Ralph Fingston, who passed away, was our expert when it came to trains, but interurbans were entirely different than streetcars. We had an interurban that came up to Cams and it went out to Berea and eventually went out to Chippewa Lake. That was one interurban. We had another interurban that traveled all the way up to Sandusky. That was a different interurban and it went through Lakewood. And then you had streetcars, which were actually to serve the local people that stopped every other corner and people would jump on and off for only a nickel. Interurbans were much more long distance type trains. They were more laid out, they were more comfortable. When you got in an interurban, you got at Cam's Corners, and next thing you know, you're getting off at Chippewa Lake, and you're going to have a day of fun and return the ride back. And there was also a line that went to Pier to Springs Park, because all those parks were built to get people to use their trolley car line. Anything else? Bill, aren't you just amazed? I told you I'd baffle
I'm
you.
impressed.
If I don't know the answer, I'll make something up.
There used to be a depot at the end of Matherson.
In Lakewood.
No, here in West.
Oh, man, okay, that one.
Yeah. What happened to that, or why was it closed?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Stumped him.
You did. Ralph would be able to tell you that. I'd have to research it,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Just a comment, if she said you took the 22, isn't that what the Lorraine?
To this day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which we've all found kind of interesting.
Yeah.
If you jump on the 22 and go downtown, you're riding the same number that people rode 100 years ago.
I read that they had changed the numbers, but then it got back to 22 again.
So,
How
many people live in the West Park area today?
How many people live here today? Wow, I'm a historian. I would guess around 30,000 maybe. I mean, we're one of the major areas of the city, and I think the West Park Historical Society, with over 200 members, if we're not the largest group, we're close to the largest group of organization in West Park. And since you guys have just loved you've hung on every word I've said, I'm sure if any of you have not joined yet, you will want to quickly become part of this group, because we do have fun. Right, Bill?
Absolutely.
Didn't you go to the Western Reserve Historical Society with us?
I did.
Yeah, so we do some road trips, and we're gonna have a
Sock hop?
we're gonna have a sock hop. So wear your poodle skirts and as part of that sock hop, well, how are we gonna get people to actually come to it? Well, we are going to do a Remember When segment, which somehow I've seemed to come up with about 20 or 30 things that were real popular back in the 50s and 60s. So that alone will make you want to come.
Who's the band?
Huh?
Who's the band?
Band? Oh, I think we're doing canned music, right?
Yeah.
DJ.
Gary.
Yeah, DJ.
Yeah.
Gary is, yeah.
So that will be kind of fun when we talk about Remember When. Everyone will have, and hopefully we'll have some interaction like this where people will, if I say foghorns, when's the last time you thought of foghorns? But when I was a little kid and you played out in the snow, and all of a sudden, there was a ship coming in the Cuyahoga River. Or you talk about Orchard or Clearwater and your telephone exchanges. You can just go on and on, kind of like I'm doing now. My wife hasn't gone like this yet. She's definitely not doing this.
Ross, invite everyone to have refreshments.
That's my last step, and I thank you, my mayor assistant.
Wait, I had to put my hat back on.
Without Elaine Schultz Staley, none of this would be possible.
Yes,
Okay, having said all that, I encourage you to look at our pictures, our maps. You'll see exactly where that grandstand was. We got the Pier to Spring display back there, and we got refreshments and snacks, chips or something. And when you come to the sock hop, don't be afraid to bring a bottle of wine or half a dozen beers, whatever you want to, bring a Coke, I don't care. But we are adults at an adult function, so it's perfectly okay to bring any beverage you want. Having said all that, That's it.
That's it.
Thank you very much.